Good afternoon, good evening, whatever it is, wherever you are. This is John Paul Rai, and I'm coming to you from Tokyo, Japan. If you're a first-time listener, consider subscribing. I do a lot of thanks and special credits, a lot of shout-outs. All you gotta do is subscribe and drop me a comment. So today, I'm gonna talk about why Reylo most likely will almost definitely not happen. I say this because there's always a chance of anything, and who the hell knows. However, I want to point out a few reasons why it would really not work so well. So I'm going to read a little bit from an article. Rian Johnson teased the possibility of the enemies to allies trope, which could be misinterpreted as the enemies to lovers trope, with Rey and Kylo as a bait and switch, with the switch occurring when Kylo kills Snoke and declares himself supreme leader. In undermining the enemies to allies trope so effectively, Rian Johnson has set the story up such that the only ways for the story to end with Rey and Kylo as lovers would be two. Number 1. Replace Kylo as the big bad, which would replace an intense, deeply personal conflict between two powerful characters with a much less intense impersonal conflict between two powerful characters, and a pushover or ham-fistedly introducing a new main villain into the third act. So basically what they're saying is, if you take Kylo away from the spot of being the big badass last boss, so to speak, then you have to add another one in that third movie. And if you add another one, it's not going to feel so right. They might add another enemy aside from Kylo Ren for someone to fight, but if you just make him Rey's lover and they become Reylo, then that just takes away all the tension of the conflict that was already built up. And that probably just wouldn't feel so right. Number 2, wait until the end of the climax to tell the love story, which would result in one of the most terribly paced movies ever made. So yeah, so they could have the whole big conflict and go through all that and keep Kylo as the big bad boss. But at the end, it just wouldn't seem to make too much sense to have this Reylo thing start. So I could agree with that. I mean, I guess it would be better having it at the very end, like he turns or something and that's it, but yeah, it still seems like I'd agree with their number 2. Number 3, end the film by giving the villain everything he wants immediately after he finally says he's sorry for all the horrible things he's done, without giving him time after that to prove himself a worthy love interest. Right, so I guess maybe they mean prove himself worthy is that, you know, Kylo killed his father. He contemplating killing his mother. He tried to kill Rey and a bunch of her friends. He should have killed Finn. I mean, that was just a fluke piece of shit, piss poor story writing thing that happened there. So, like, what kind of a person is Rey if she falls for someone who killed their father? I don't know. It seems just really unviable. And why would you want that? Why would you want a couple to get together and one is like, you know, this good person and the other one killed their father, and the good person's like, oh yeah, you killed your father, you did all this horrible stuff, but yeah, I could forgive that. It kind of makes her worse in a way. I mean, I guess you could forgive people, but on that level, it seems, I don't know, kind of unrealistic to me. So now let me get into a few things about JJ Abrams, and if he did it, what would happen. Regardless of how you feel about JJ Abrams as a filmmaker, the above are not things that he tends to do in his movies. The above meaning what I just read, the 3 points I just made. His films have villains that aren't pushovers and have interesting levels of emotional conflict. His movies tend to have fairly short run times and are conveniently paced. His TV shows are one thing, but his movies tend to have conventional feel-good endings where the good guys win and the bad guys get they're just desserts. It says just desserts, pretty silly. I think he means what's coming to them or what they deserve. You know, I'm going to take his word for it that JJ's probably a little bit more of a traditional story writer. A Reylo romance isn't going to happen in episode 9 unless JJ Abrams makes decisions that strictly from a film pointing perspective would be objectively bad. He has no history of making similar decisions in his past films, so it is highly unlikely he will do so now. So yeah, that's the bottom line of this article, is that, you know, if Reylo happened, it would just be some very bad pacing, storytelling, What happened was Rian Johnson subverted our expectations within The Last Jedi. So he set it up where it looked like Kylo was going to turn, but he didn't. So when Kylo decided not to turn and become Supreme Leader, at that point is when the Reylo thing kind of went out the window. And that's what people, I think, aren't quite seeing or quite understanding as they're holding on to that. Like, well, Reylo's going to happen, but they didn't realize that their expectations had been subverted. And I'm going to also guess that people who like Reylo like The Last Jedi, what they're not understanding is that it wasn't subverted in a good way. His subverted expectations were just kind of shock value, and they didn't work on any level, good or bad. So, those are my thoughts. You guys let me know about Reylo. I think it's not happening, but you know, you never know. Lucasfilms and their writers have been making some pretty bad decisions, so I'm not going to go totally against it, but I'm going to give it like a 95% no. Community's growing little by little. Thanks for all the support. Subscribers are coming in little by little, and I will see you next time.